Hey book and wine lovers, we have the best, all caps best news for you. Volume 2 of Bookish Wine is officially available to order, and we have a special offer to share with you. Use our new code NARRATIVES30 for $30 off Volume 2 at bookishwine.com. If you're new to Bookish Wine, it's a quarterly subscription club, or one-time boxes are available too, bringing a special edition romantasy book and artisan crafted bottle of wine right to your door. Here's what you can expect with a Volume 2 box. A special edition of Bound by Hearts and Stone by Lauren Sinatra, completely exclusive to Bookish Wine members. We're talking hardcover with sprayed edges, foil details, character art, and more. Then you'll escape into the world with the boutique wine pairing, crafted to reflect the story's themes, characters, and mood. Plus, we know the artist design label will be gorgeous and complement the book. Now, here's another thing that's totally unique about Volume 2. You'll receive a free audiobook code. That's right, you'll be able to listen with your ear holes, read with your eyeballs, or both. Head to bookishwine.com and use code NARRATIVES30 by March 15th, 2026 for $30 off, and upgrade your reading nights with this immersive, unique bookish experience. Must be 21 or older. Please sip and savor responsibly.
Narratives and discussions may cover heavy content. For more information and disclaimers, please visit narrativesandnightcaps.com and take care while listening.
Welcome to Narratives and Nightcaps, books, beverages, and author conversations. I'm Brie, always ready to dive into new fantasy worlds and take a step back in time.
I'm Megan, part critic, always team physical copy, and forever chasing good thrillers and a great plot twist.
I'm Emily, your resident mood reader who thrives on chaos questions and lively book chats.
And I'm Jordan, equal parts heart, humor, and high-functioning caffeine addict. I come with coffee in hand, wine on standby, and a Gilmore Girls quote for every occasion.
Cheers!
Cheers!
Hello, hello! Today I am excited to welcome debut author Brionni Nwosu to the Narratives and Nightcaps podcast to chat about the tender, courageous, and transformative story, The Wondrous Life and Loves of Nella Carter. Hi, Brie!
Hi, Bree. So good to meet you and to be here.
I know, two Brees taking on the podcast today, so very fun, but we do spell it differently. Mine is like the cheese, and yours is with an I, which is normally what people always come to whenever I say Brie, like if I'm at a coffee shop, they go, "Oh, Brie, with an I or an E?" And I go, "Actually, an I-E."
How you have to spell it. And what's funny was when I was growing up, my parents always spelled it B-R-E-E. Like that was it. Like growing up, my family, even when they write me cards to this day, they put B-R-E-E. And then when I went to college, I was like, I'm taking control over this. My name is B-R-I. So I'm going to be, and so that to me is the symbol of me being a grown up, choosing which spelling I was going to go by forever.
I love that. I didn't have that strength apparently, but I will say most people, I don't know what you get when you tell people Brie, because they're always like, "Oh, what's it short for? Brianna, Brittany, anything like that." And mine is short for Gabrielle. So that normally throws people for a loop with that too. Well,
No, but it's just nice. You did name yourself, right? Because you could have been a Gabby. You could have been a B-I. You could have been a BBY. You could have been any of those things.
But here we are today, both of us. I love meeting a fellow Brie, and I'm so excited to talk about your novel, your debut book. Oh,
No, like both of them. Yeah.
both copies. So I'm not gonna. It's one of the most stunning covers I've ever seen. But totally going off book here, off script. What kind of involvement do you have when it came to both your covers?
So it was more than I thought it would be. I think you get all the stories from different people of like, hey, you just got to go with what they, put in front of you. You should just be happy to be getting a cover. And I was so happy to be a part of that process. And so for this cover, the flower cover, the original one, and I'm hoping I'm not talking too much out of school, it was literally just a tree. And so it was like a live oak tree, Savannah trees. Savannah's part of the book. And it was just like a tree. And I was like, and they were like, do you want a green tree or do you want a purple tree? And I was like, there are no trees in the book. You just didn't get the inspiration. And so thankfully there was some back and forth, and it was like, well, we love pretty flowers. So there's not too much about flowers in the book, but I think it captures kind of like the beauty, the short nature of a flower, and just how evocative that can be. And then with the hardcover, total surprise that they went and did this. I know all the people listening to the audio version can't see it, but for them to put the actual flowers on the hardcover was such a special surprise. And then for the UK cover, I got to choose between the two different illustrators. So there were two people who were vying for it. And so I was really happy to have input, and, they gave me an opportunity to get feedback, and we changed door colors and different things around. And so it was very much more, I was surprised to be as a part of that process. Like, I thought you just turn it in and they just run with it. But they let me pick the narrators or at least have input into the audiobook narrators. So being able to see like Nicole Cash and then, Sean Creston, it was just amazing to have that opportunity. It's like your creativity made work for other people. And so that's the really cool part of it, that other people are going to be able to like feed their families or show their crafts through, one media forum that I was able to share.
That's amazing. Such a cool experience, and that you got to have a voice in your creation too, but to your point, like helping other people support in their specific crafts too. It's a full circle moment there. So that's amazing. Before we dive in a little bit further about the story, all of that, first, I would love to know what your nightcap pairing is. What would you pair with this book?
For this book, I am always a fan of a cosmopolitan. Like, there's a very long backstory of like, I was having a terrible time in Las Vegas. It was the worst. And my husband was like, y'all got to give her something, like you make something. And the bartender was like, here's this cosmopolitan. And it's been my go-to ever since. But for this part, I was like, well, what would be creative enough to go with Nella? What would kind of go along with this? And so for Nella, I put a pomegranate cosmopolitan, because it made me think of like the Greek myth, and thinking about, having to Persephone and having to go to the underworld with Hades. And so you're kind of dealing with death, and you're tied together for a bit of time, and then you get to go and be somewhere else, but then you always have to keep coming back. So I thought it was a little bit symbolic of like Nella's experience in that way. But then when I was thinking of like, well, what would Death drink? And it's like, definitely there's like a whiskey with some amaretto. It's like, it's very strong. There's like sweet undertones, but it's a very full bodied beverage. So it was just really interesting thinking of like, what would everybody, represent for this particular book?
Oh, that's so cool. I love both of those options, honestly. So whatever your vibe is for that, pomegranate too. I will say, if I see a drink with pomegranate on the menu, I'm almost always gonna go to that. I just love that flavor. So you're definitely speaking to me with that. And then on the flip side, the whiskey, well, one, I love amaretto, so anything too that involves that, yeah. Oh, I love both of those. And I love that you had more than one, thinking about the different characters. Very, very cool. Well, I also want to start with just a bit of a bookish and beverage type icebreaker a little bit. So first, I'm very curious, what book would you say made you fall in love with reading, or made you feel seen as a reader for the first time?
That made me feel seen. I was always a reader. And so I'm actually going to say it wasn't one book. It was actually just books in general. And what I'll say is, my mom is a thrifter. So she would always be going to different Goodwills and different things. She's always thrifting. She'd drag you along. But when I was growing up, they would have these huge bags of books that you would get for $2. And then they would have like Sweet Valley High, the Boxcar Children, you've got the Babysitters Club. And so I would just tear through all of those, like one by one, just going through the stack. It was like, that was like the best gift to give me. And so I feel like those kind of commercial books have really like driven the types of things I read. And so my mom, she was reading romance novels, and my dad was reading like James Patterson thrillers. So that kind of like made up the mix. But in terms of like bookish, it's funny that, and one of the things I share is that my first name, Brionni, comes from a romance novel that she was reading when she was pregnant with me. And so she was reading it, and she was like, John, how do you think you pronounce this? And he was like, I don't know. And he spelled it Brionni. And so that came from a book, and my middle name is Anne, and her favorite book is Anne of Green Gables. And so she was like, you have to be Anne with an E. And so it's just like, okay, well, predestined to really love books if like that's the foundation. And so I don't think I have an early memory of like those seminal books of like what really got me into it, but there were a couple in middle school that were really transformative in terms of like one of the outlooks that I have on life. And so I can't remember the name of the book now, but it was basically a girl is forced into an arranged marriage, and then they have to renew it every 30 days or she'll be kicked out. And so, she's trying to make the man fall in love with her. I'm like, she's a teenager. How is this happening? But there's just this long metaphor about her learning how to make this rug. And then she picks bad colors for the rug. And then she's like, I'm going to cut this rug. I know what I did wrong. I'm going to cut it and start over. And then she feels free for a second. And then she gets immediately punished because somebody was like, it didn't matter if you didn't like it. You finished it. You could have sold it. You could have picked better colors for the next rug. And so that's kind of like my approach for life or any of this stuff. Just finish it. It could be ugly. It can be whatever it is. Go along with it. But if you keep abandoning it and then going off to the next thing, you're never going to get to your final prize. And sometimes it's not for you. And you just have to take that learning to the next project. And so that's kind of what it feels like as I'm working on like different books or just finish your thing and just keep going. But don't just, I'm going to cut the cords and I'll be free. And it's like, no, you're not. Now you have to start from scratch. So like, just keep building.
It's such a good message and reminder. I try to remind myself of that too. And I think it's so important for writers and so hard too, because you have to do it bad. You have to do it bad and you can't give up on it just because like it's bad. I was watching an interview with another author, and I feel bad that it's like escaping me who it was, but she was saying the same thing. She's like, if you want to write, you have to be willing to write bad before you write the book. Before you write the book that you want to go out into the world, it has to be bad. And I think that that's just so important too. A big reminder for myself last year in particular was I kept telling myself like progress, not perfection, progress, not perfection. I know everybody says that, but it's just such a good reminder because it's really easy to fall into the flip side of that and put such unnecessary pressure on yourself. Also, not only are we two Brees, but we are two Brianns.
It was meant to be. This is going to be the highlight of my Wednesday morning. So, it's fun to see. Our parents are similar. They got the Bree vibes. They got the Ann vibes. That's going to be great. So
I love it. Yep. The second you said that, I was like, oh my goodness, same here. And also with an E too. Yep. Okay. What's one book that you wish you could go back and read again for the first time?
Oh, reading again for the first time. And it's going to seem, I don't know, maybe it's planned because this book, like some of the inspiration was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. But that was literally one of my best reads, I think, in 2023. And my thing as an author is like, I read a lot from Kindle or I'm reading from the library. So my own personal library, I only buy books that I loved, like loved. I need to have the hard copy. I'm copying down the different components of it. And again, I'm a very commercial reader. So really love The Seven Husbands. We just read The Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt again for my book club. And so really loved that one. I appreciated so much the quirkiness of Lessons in Chemistry and like, how do you make a book stand out? And so I am always a fan of just things that have a different structure, have a different narrator, what are you doing at a craft level? So it's like, what interesting structural things are you doing? And I think all of those books have like non-traditional narrators. You have secondary characters. We're moving through the past, we're moving through the present as you're going through, but you're also having a commentary of the world at large for that time of like what's really not working for these women. So those are like some of my favorites. And then the other one that came out after Nella, and when it came out, I was like, oops, this book is so similar to Nella. Books take such a long time. You're like, what is happening? But A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams is also one of my favorites. It is on my shelf because it deals with the Harlem Renaissance. There's a little bit of magic happening. There's past and there's present. And so I think that was one of my favorite reads as well.
Okay, good to know. I need to put that one on my TBR. Otherwise, I'm right there with you with The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Lessons in Chemistry um, was s such an interesting read to me, and I really like that. And I love that author's story too. It's such a powerful story of resilience and not giving up and staying true to the story that you've written. And I have Remarkably Bright Creatures on my shelf. I need to read it. It was gifted to me and I've heard just incredible things, so I can't wait to dive into that one. Do you have a go-to beverage that you associate with writing or reading time?
With writing or reading time, I do a lot of sparkling beverages. So there's a clear American grapefruit soda that's, I guess, Fresca-ish is like that's mine in the house. The kids don't drink it. My husband doesn't drink it. That's just mine that I kind of have around. But I am not a tea or coffee drinker. So like, even when I'm working in a coffee shop, I'm like, I smell like coffee. It's in my hair and my head starts spinning. It's like I'm breathing in the caffeine. And so I just didn't grow up in a household where that was like a thing, like drinking coffee to stay up. So I'm just more of a soda girl. I definitely cannot imbibe when I'm drinking because very quickly it's like, no, we're not writing anything. So I try to stick to like sparkling beverages. And yeah, that would be my go-to.
I like that. Well, if you could invite anyone from history to dinner, since you're probably not going to invite them to a coffee shop or tea, to dinner, who would you invite?
I think, well, first, I'm gonna be selfish and pick my grandmother, my grandma Bessie. I haven't seen her in a long time, and she was just, if you've ever had anybody who just loved you unconditionally, like, the sun just shines out of every orifice, just somebody who was just so encouraging and just always supportive. And I kind of feel like she's still around in some way. So if you could bring somebody back, I think that would be one. And then I'm very nosy and very like, what is it? Conspiracy theory like things. So I would just have a list of like Amelia Earhart. Where did you go? Can we wrap this up?
What
What is
happened?
yeah, what is Roatoan? The little village in Virginia where they just did Croatoan or whatever. It's just that stuff. Like, can I just know? Can we just put a bow end on it? So any of those like disappearances, what happened to Lindbergh's baby, any of those types of things, those are the people I really wanted to meet just for closure. I have like that open loop in my head of like, can somebody just come up with an answer, just please, so we can check this off the list?
Oh, I'm so similar when it comes to that because I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts and often like cold cases or disappearances, and there are a few of those like Amelia Earhart that I think, okay, when I get upstairs, I just gotta have a list. Be like, so I need to know now, now that
Just
we're all
go
here.
through, yeah, it's gonna be like, hey Jesus, or whatever entity,
Yep.
universe. Like I'm agnostic. Yeah, well, whoever,
Whatever,
like
whatever you
whoever.
believe, but wherever you go, whatever you believe, I'm like, whenever I get wherever, hopefully, I would
Yep.
really love to have these typed up in a bow, or I just want to know what went down.
Yeah.
I want to solve these puzzles that we've all been pondering for so long and trying to solve. Just really hope there's an opportunity for me to sit with the powers that be and be like, okay, so about that.
Exactly. See, the breeze unite. We're on the same page.
I love it. Yep, this was meant to be. Okay, so Nella Stories spans centuries and countries. If you could travel to any time period, would you actually do it? And if so, where would you go? What time?
If I could actually go. It's funny, the project I'm working on now is kind of the same thing of like, okay, if you could pick a point in time and live, like, would you really like go and be there? And so I kind of have the same criteria, like it has to have air conditioning. So like that already cuts off anything past. So there has to be air conditioning, there has to be modern science, it has to be at least enlightened enough that somebody of my complexion can have a good time there. It is not automatically doomed to whatever social mores are of the time. And so some bits of it is I like the styling of like the 1940s. And so with my grandmother, we would watch a lot of older movies and things like that. So I would just love the suits and the styling and the hairstyles and just like kind of the verve of that particular era. And I think that, with the World War II here in America, it felt like women were doing stuff. Rosie the Riveter, you were empowered and, a little bit that way. So it feels like the idealistic time of it, but then I know it's not, it was more complicated than that from people actually living through that time and having to deal with the people here at home and limitations and how far you could go. But I think air conditioning is really my number one requirement for wherever I would end up in time.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I think that that's a great answer. I mean, nothing's as simple as, and for a black and white answer like that, if we really had the opportunity to do something like that, I'm sure we would all be factoring in many, many realistic components. But my husband and I kind of joke about that sometimes because I'm a big fan of period pieces when it comes to anything I watch on TV or movies. I'm just a big fan of them. And I'll always joke with him. I'm like, man, like I would really, wouldn't that be so cool? And he's like, you would never make it. Like one, either you would have an issue with the living conditions and you wouldn't last, or like you would probably say something you're not supposed to and you'd be like burned or hung. Like he's like, horrible things would happen to you. This just, it wouldn't work. I'm like,
it wouldn't work. Like you think it's all quaint, but it's like I don't actually like roasting marshmallows that long. It's like, oh, it's hot. You have to cook everything this way, and there's no refrigeration. I think sometimes though, if I was to think of a recent time, it would be like the late 1990s, like before social media, when I'm just a kid, come home, Nick at Night, watching somebody get slimed, Legends of the Hidden Temple. Like that would be like peak if I could just go back and be a kid in that era where it was like kid focused. I think that would be a great time too, before you knew what the world really is.
I think that's where it's at. I totally agree with that. One last one. Is there a country that you haven't been to yet that is just at the top of your list if you have the opportunity to go?
It's Greece. I feel like when I was growing up again at my grandma Bessie's house, we would be there for the summer for weeks. My sister hated it. She completely hated it. And my brother was playing video games in the very back. And so my grandmother had a series of like Reader's Digest books. And so in a number of those, there would be just like Greek myths or kind of classics and all those types of things. So kind of going along with Persephone, that's kind of where you start imbibing at least the westernized culture of like, here are the stories, here are the myths and things like that. And so I know I'm not going to have a good time when I actually go because you've built yourself up and you know how touristy it can be and how it can sound. But I do really like ancient cultures to be like, oh, they were walking around. They had graffiti too. They had some running water and just to see that space. So that's definitely on my list to just go and kind of put like, okay, I read these stories. Let me see the places that they really existed. But I also am at the place too where just any tropical island, again, detached from work, no work emails, everything's left behind, just, a nice strong drink on a beach with TikTok. Perfect. I don't care where it's at.
Yeah, as someone who is very chilly today, even though she lives in Florida, I'm like, oh, somewhere warm sounds good. I'm sitting here talking to you and have a blanket over my legs, and I realize that it is much colder other places. I grew up in the Midwest, so I did my time, but I'm like, ooh, my hands are cold too. Like, hopefully I don't click the wrong button because my fingers can't move. Okay. Let's jump into it. For those just meeting your work for the first time, hearing about it, watching a clip, anything, please tell us what The Wondrous Life and Loves of Nella Carter is about.
It is about a woman who is on the edge of death, and who is about to depart from this world, and she meets death, and he's pretty sick of the world and all the things that he's been doing. He keeps having to gather people from all these battlefields and seeing how we like terrorize each other and the terrible things that we do, and he's like, time for a reset. And so when he meets her on the edge of her death, they basically strike up a bargain where she still believes that there's goodness, something redemptive within humanity, and he just doesn't see it yet. And so he strikes up this bargain that he'll keep her alive to prove to me, bring me the evidence, bring me the writing, bring me the examples to show that these humans are worth saving. And that's what she does. And she engages and she crosses continents and all these different times, living and loving and trying to find this evidence for him and not quite knowing if he's ever going to accept it or if that's going to be the end of everything. And I think she goes through a journey sometimes where she's like, nope, he's 100% right. We can go ahead and wrap this up. And so I think that it allows the reader to kind of go through that same thing, that if you're living at any time in human history, but especially today, sometimes it is hard to see the goodness that is in humans or how we could be kind to each other, the things that we can do and how we're supposed to support each other, or at least in theory. And so I think that in what can feel like dark times, but there have always been dark times, this book kind of delves into the hope that there's still something good and you can be the good, even if you don't see that outside of yourself.
Yeah, it was. I'll probably repeat myself. I know I already said this to you, but the timing of this book couldn't have been better for me personally. And I hope and I feel like other readers will relate to that too and feel the same way. So, when did the seed of this story first come to you? And was it a character? Was it a question? Was it a moment in history that you'd thought about before?
Well, it was actually at a time I had read both The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue and then also The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And so like when the book kind of came together, it was just like, oh, I really love those two like points of inspiration. And so like as I'm diving into the book and diving into the characters, I always say that death showed up on the page very, very early, like very, very early. Like even when I started writing, and this was back in like March of 2023 is when I started this whole writing process. And like when death walked into the page, you're like, hey, where's death going? And it's not going to be good for whoever he meets. And, you're just going through that. So death always showed up on the page, like very, very like early when we were going through this whole process. I would also say that in thinking of this particular story, knowing that it's centered on a woman who is enslaved, I also tried to make sure that that wasn't the major focus. So when I read some books, sometimes as like an African American, I identify as Black, and I'm reading books that are supposed to be for Black audiences, I'm a very joyful person. And a lot of those books kind of delve into the trauma and the terrible things that happened and how bad everything was. And let you show my pain. I'm bleeding on the page for you. And so with Nella, I think that her having that not be the central focus, like she's just a person who happens to be enslaved. Death could have ran into anybody. And really just being able to see like what were kind of, again, the mores of the time and how she's able to deal with that she is still capable of love. She has complex thought. She's not this reductive character. And so having her having a mixed race background, which was typical of the time, and then how you navigate these different social circles based on whatever is available to you was interesting. And then in coming through research, Eulalie, she's one of my favorite characters who shows up in Nouvelle Orleans, who is a real person who was engaged in a real marriage to Eugene. It was just really of like, okay, here's this woman of color, like jeune du couleur is what they called themselves. And so she really did have all those storehouses and all this other stuff, but she was biracial too. So it was just really just how did the world really work outside of what they said of like, these people had it, these people didn't. It was just a terrible time. But I think it was just more complex than that.
It was so interesting I learned so much history-wise and Black history-wise just from reading this, which is one of the reasons I even love fiction literature, is because there's always something new that you can learn from that. So how did you ultimately decide which historical threads to weave into the story? Were there ones that maybe didn't make it into the final version? I would assume there were, but how did you decide which ones to keep?
Yeah, so it's like you first you have your endpoints, right? So it's like, okay, we know we're starting in like the 1700s, and was doing this weird thing when I started. I was like, okay, at first death is going to meet her every 12 years. So I wrote out a whole timeline, and it was supposed to be like, a routine thing that they were going to meet. But then you do more additions and you do more things, you get feedback from your editor, and it's like, oh, well, that doesn't work. So there's lots of other times that go into it. But it's kind of like if you're giving this to like a modern reader, what are going to be the periods that they would kind of expect to see. And so one of the things that did happen through editing is the timeline would get shifted, right? So it would be like, hey, this love, there were like two other loves that didn't make it into the book and got cut just due to space, due to sensitivity readers. And so they would read it and be like, hey, I don't know if this character is adding as much as this other character. And it'd be better just to spend more time on this character than trying to like delve into this other one. So there was a love that was in Sierra Leone for a time period right in the 1830s. And so this is, slavery is illegal in Great Britain. So they've got these British ships off the coast of Africa, which are like abducting these slave ships. And so they're trying to stop them before they get to the open air. And they repatriated them to Sierra Leone. So in one version of the story, that's where Nella is helping these people who have just been captured off these ships bound for the New World and who were able to keep here, but then they're people without a place. You were stolen from somewhere else. So that was just really interesting to know that was what the British were doing to kind of like break down the slave trade of capturing these ships and like sending the people back, and how they use Sierra Leone for that.
Wow, I didn't know that. Oh, there's so much. Like I just feel like I need to do my due diligence and dive in, which you have an extensive list of books on your websites that you said were a part of your research, and I love it when authors do that, when they either share, they're like, this is everything I use. I think that's so cool. So in your research then, maybe it was that moment, were there other moments that either surprised you or unsettled you or just directly shaped Nella's story?
Directly shaping her story, I always say Adam is my favorite love out of all of them. And so there was a version of the book where there was another love right after Adam. And it was just interesting to see her go to Paris and live in Paris and post World War II. And I think we mentioned that in the book a little bit. And it's kind of maybe that's one of the backstory of the side of maybe what she was doing when she was there after the war. But it's just like, if you've just lost somebody that really meant a lot to you, you want to go to this. I don't care what happens to me. I'll go where they're blowing stuff up. I'm kind of over it. I'm willing to go there. So I feel like it's those kind of moments of like what's happening in her personal life and what's happening at the world at large. And it's almost like the world is quickly developing itself. This industrialization, we have shipping. We moved from these, this rickety ship she left in like 1796, and now she's coming back on a steamer in the early 1900s after World War I. And so you see technology kind of develop. But then there's some things where humans are still the same. So a really big focus was on the Harlem Renaissance too. So just exploring that time in New York and who would be there and just what she was going through personally. So just trying to show where the places where she would be, where she could be helpful, and that people would resonate and recognize those places from their own, experience.
Yeah, or anticipating too as they're reading, thinking, oh, this is what's coming, this is up next. Oh, she's still gonna have to face that too. That makes a lot of sense. How do you hope readers, and maybe especially Black readers, but how do you hope readers in general feel when they encounter Nella's story and the historical event she experiences?
Yeah, I hope they feel a little bit like you did, like, hey, I didn't even know that was a thing. And so it feels like you're approaching it with a curiosity. And I'm hoping that you're internalizing of like, what would I do? That's kind of the question, if I was offered this, how would I go about it? How would you respond to these different situations, and just helping her be successful? But I think it's like, I want people to respond as a reader that you like the story, but it's also to, as a writer, that people can see they can do the hard things, and whatever your particular thing, your wondrous life, that you're living that too. So whatever it is, just go forth and try it. And so I think even just going through this process of like finally writing a book is like a part of that. And like, oh, you finally published a book, you did a hard thing. So I just hope that people really just resonate with it. It feels like a good use of your time and your life, and you kind of carry it with you when, again, things seem really dark. But I think, especially when times are dark, to realize times have always been dark. It's just the first time it's been in your palm that you can watch it happening live, and just to see how humans can really be, and just what choice are you going to make in the situation. So I think people of all shades, all creeds, all colors can be terrible to their fellow man, to their families, to all those things are possible, but that's not the only story for humanity. There's enough, I think, of us where it's like, no, this is worth living. You can make this better for somebody else.
Yeah, I think Nella showed me a lot about, the dark side of humanity could very easily overpower the light side. And so sometimes you have to look a little bit harder for the good, but it's always worth searching for that and making sure that that's present in your day. So I think that that's just hopefully something that I and other readers can carry with them forever after they've connected with Nella. Being that this is your debut, what did writing this book teach you about yourself as a storyteller?
I think there is a thought process when you're a new writer that, oh, if I can just plan, it won't be so painful. If I can just have the perfect outline, it's going to be nice and easy. I won't go through what other people are going through. And it's like, that's never the case. Like, you're just going to get notes that you're like, I don't know what that means, from you, like, oh, just show us more. And it's like, I gave you what I had. I don't know what else, to put there on the page. But I would say it really taught me to like see how I could chunk things down to not get so overwhelmed. And so like, even on the thing, I have a part of a manuscript due on Monday, and I'm in the overwhelming, like, you should have been doing this over break. You should have did a little bit more, but it's a little bit like, no, the main things, you're just kind of adding in, you're finessing. It's not life or death. You're literally making things up. You're just making stuff up. And so as you're making stuff up, am I considering my reader? So I would say now, in part of my process, I really think like, is this going to be clear for a reader? Can they picture this in their head? What like example or connection can I put in here that this reader would connect with? Like, what's a universal experience of like waiting for coffee and dealing with a rude client? Or, there's a scene I was working on earlier and I had to pick a random day, right? So when you're writing books, you have to pick it all. And so it's like, okay, you start like, I don't know, what season is it? I don't know. And so I was like, okay, well, it's a little drizzly in February in New York. And so it's like, okay. And then I'm asking myself questions. Okay, but like, what specific day? Like, Brie, come on, what day are you going to pick? And you're literally all the time, I don't know. I'm literally making it up. And you're hoping nobody's going to really call you on it. You're trying to, make all these things. And then the thing I settled on today was like, oh, it's February 15th. And you're like, well, why is it February? And it's February 15th because it's the day after Valentine's Day. And so the day after Valentine's Day may be a day that somebody who's lacking love in their life might be like pondering. You might see like some Valentine's Day trash. And I have like a balloon that's like half deflated. So like, what is going to be an external thing that's going to make my character really think about who they are, the state of the world, and what might be around that they're, kind of meditating on their life. So I think it's like those things. It's like, how can you chunk it to make it easier for yourself? How are you trying to root it in something that the reader can relate to and be like, oh, I can understand somebody being sad, like all this love, I don't have anybody. And you don't have to be like, oh, woe is me. But, just a little bittersweet, like, like you feel your heart pings a little bit for them. You feel empathy for them. And I think that's what can help like keep people reading.
Oh, it absolutely does. And it did for me with Nella for sure. Thank you for like giving us access to your brain and that process, because I love it when I get to hear from Brian, because everybody's so different. And so I love hearing kind of what their process is, what the conversations are like in their head to ultimately bring it together. It's so, so, so neat. So just thank you for sharing that little insight into what your brain looks like in putting a story together. It's so cool.
Oh, I would also say that for this though, I hear the characters for the most part, so I don't feel like I'm writing. I feel like I'm listening in on a conversation and I'm trying to capture it down. And so sometimes when I'm writing, I read it and it's just like I don't recognize that or remember because you're so like in the flow state of like this conversation. And then there's been so many drafts of it. And so it's just very cool to like let the characters talk and then they just surprise you with like, no, I don't like that. And you're like, okay, I didn't know. I'll put it back, my bad, you know. So it's really like an interactive, whatever's on the other side, it feels like there's an entity like coming through you, that feels like a living thing when you're like at your little computer typing away.
It's a true conversation, and sometimes your characters go in a direction that you did not intend for them to go, but you can't rein them in or pull them back. They have to go down that journey. They have to go down that path. They have to make that turn, whatever it is. But I think it's a really amazing and just incredible talent and gift too. And that's what brings it to life. That's what makes people see it. It's what makes everybody feel what those characters are going through. Magical realism is such a unique subgenre and everything, and it plays a central role, like we've said, in this one, especially with the Faust-inspired element, making a deal, the cost, echoes across time, all of that. And as we said, there are other titles out there that have kind of explored this, like The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, also a personal favorite of mine. What are some similarities or differences that feel most important to you with Nella's story?
I feel like the differences for Nella's story is that it's centered on the world a little bit more. So, like in The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, it was really just her story. And, you know, she's kind of scrapping. She's trying to survive. She's just trying to make it through. And, you know, I think she starts off just more defiant. Like she just didn't want to marry that old man. And that's literally like the extent of it. And I did like, you know, when she got dropped in the other place and I don't understand this language and now you've got to learn Italian and all this other stuff. But I think that Nella's more externally focused about like what's happening in the external world and how that external world might see her and some of those challenges because she's not dealing with the invisibility of it. I also like that she had money in this story. So it wasn't like, you know, this poverty tale, like, you know, if you've been alive that long, you should have managed to arrange to have a little bit of, you know, some kind of scratch, you know, you should be able to do things. And so I feel like that's a theme in like this book, the one I'm working on, and kind of like people, we spend our lives in pursuit of money. We spend our life in pursuit of things. But at the end of the day, you'll be sitting on a pile full of money and it won't mean anything if you don't have anybody who's there with you, or if you don't have people who care about you. You literally, as we can see, have all the money in the world and just be alone with hate in your heart, and it didn't do anything for you. And, you know, I don't want to sound like pedantic, but it's just, you know, I really do appreciate the small free things of just hanging out with my family and having friends and people who care about you and just not feeling that pressure of go, acquire. You have to have everything. And so I think that that's one of the threads in the book is just like, money isn't quite the thing. It really is like the time you spend with people that makes up your life, is your experiences, you know? So I think it's like a meditation. Like if you could live forever, would you? And when would it get tiring? Which would be the loss that really like humbles you and, you know, destroys you?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a very thought-provoking in multiple ways too. Like you mentioned, I mean, just the pressure in and of itself with the deal that she makes to
Mhm.
preserve humanity and whether or not that's worth it. And I'm I loved how I was so curious at the beginning of what her relationship with death was going to be like. I was like, where is this going to go? What's going to happen?
People
Yeah.
are a little weird and what's happening, and like you kind of need each other. I think it's also interesting for Nella because you don't really see magical realism from that particular seat, is why it's also interesting that, you know, I love like one of the books we read in high school. I was in the IB program growing up, and one of the books was 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and then The House of the Spirits, I believe, by Isabel Allende. And so I really liked that magical stuff just happens and people just keep on going, and it's just the house is magic, the thing is magic, or whatever the thing may be. And so it's just like, you know, this whole life thing is like a miracle. So whenever I can add like a touch of magic or a little sprinkle of stardust, that that's a win for me. That's like the best day.
Oh, I mean, I wish I could write something like that too, because I don't know. There's just something about it too with having some sort of belief that there is like a little bit of magic out there and you get to make it up and you get to do it. But even just in our everyday, like thinking that the impossible can still be possible and that there's some sort of magic out there that can help us or help us find this hope or anything along those lines, I think is just really important, especially in heavier times too.
Mhm.
Did any character feel especially hard or maybe especially healing to write?
I would say Diego was hard. And I feel like Diego was hard because I think it's what with a lot of writers, if you don't share that ethnic background, you want to make sure that you're doing a good job and representative. Like I've never been to Argentina. So when I was writing these chapters, it's a little bit like I've got a lot of research to do, so you're watching like all these videos, you're trying to be like representative of a culture and like, why would she be going here? And, she ends up going there, I think you see because of like the postcards. So she goes to visit all the places she's fulfilling like that final request. And so I also like the little objects too. So I like the postcards. I like the 10 figures. Like what's the physical, again, what's the physical thing that sends somebody on a journey or makes them reflect? And so Diego felt hard to be representative, but I would also say Renee felt hard because there's less historical stuff, right? So the buildings aren't there. There are no YouTube videos for me to be able to watch you walking around Paris and doing these other things. So there's a lot that kind of goes into like, okay, if you have this particular point in time, what makes it feel like this point in time for other people who are not going to study it as deeply, that resonate as being true and won't offend the people who live there to be like, oh, she's just making it up. Like, yes, it's fiction. I literally am making this up. So I would say that that was really hard. But as terms of healing would be Adam. It's funny with Adam, my brother, his middle name is Arthur. It's like a family name. But when he was first born, my mother, in a bit of defiance, was he's going to be Adam. That's the first man. He's going to be Adam. And my dad changed it on the birth certificate anyway. So it didn't matter. But Adam to me is like that. He's the character who's I think closest to me is like kind of optimism of like, the world is awful. That's not my problem. I'm going to keep doing what I need to do. Oh, people are awful and racist. That's not my problem. I'm going to keep doing what I want to do. They can believe whatever they're going to believe, but that has no bearing on me. And so I know that comes from a place of kind of incredible privilege. And I'm really like, I don't really have Trump. I've really had a really excellent human experience. I cannot like, I've had an excellent time like being here on this earth. Like, again, air conditioning, middle class, housing, food, like opportunity. Like I really can't complain. And so it really just feels like, oh, well, let's go do and have a good time. And how can we make sure everybody else has that same good foundation where there's just no problems? Air conditioning. I don't know how that became the theme of this particular talk.
With the
I would
podcast.
just but I do think it really is like there's optimism that's there, but I think as I'm getting older, I'm really, really evaluating what matters. So like even publishing a book, that's great, but it's still like, oh, it's still my family is what matters. It still is my friendships is what matters. When I leave this place, they're going to be like, she wrote a book and she was a wife or she was a mother and she was a friend. And that's literally all you can kind of leave behind. And so just trying to be the best at that.
Yeah, I think I had a hard realization of that last year too, of what truly mattered in light of anything that was going on in my personal life. And when it came down to it, I mean, I was like, well, at the end of the day, it's my husband and our relationship and my family and my friends and like at least here in the physical world, I was like, that's what matters to me, and everything else is just bonus, I guess. And but at the same time, like if there was anything that was actively separating me from those things or detracting from it or making it worse, I was like, nope, this no longer serving me in any sort of healthy or positive way. But so yeah, I think it's separating yourself from, and that's easier said than done. Also someone who like I'm beyond privileged life, and I'm very, very fortunate for the opportunities that I have had and all of that. So I know it's not black and white. It's easy to say all of that. Um, but wherever you can, when you can, like to recognize what the priority is with that, and hopefully it is the people around you, whether they're by blood or found family or friendships, anything like that. Like, you get to determine who those people are in your life, and hopefully can devote the time and attention to them too.
Yeah, I love found family, and I think even in this book is I love that love comes in many containers.
It
And
does.
so when you're looking at all the like the different loves, I think Adam too, like in the early version, Adam was like a romantic love. And then, my first editor, she read it and she was like, I want to see a different one. So like, what is a platonic love? Like, we just understand each other as creatives. And, so just to have that, and I believe love really doesn't have a container. It's really just like the meeting of the spirit, and that can come in lots of different ways. And I think you see that in one of her later relationships. It's just I just wish everybody could find their person, like the person who gets them, that sees them, that makes them feel like seen and understood. Because I've had that. And when I see so many people who live very hard lives with people they're married to, or people that are raising, that don't see them, or don't see and don't breathe life into them. And that almost feels like the worst type of life, to be trapped, unseen.
I couldn't agree more, and that's so beautifully said. Because, well, Adam in particular had like personal, connections for me too, that I was like, to your point, love isn't always just like, oh, two people loved each other and then they got married and that was love. It comes in so many different ways with so many different people too. And that is so special about Nella's story in particular, that it showcases that too. Can you tell me, because we do have other writers and aspiring writers that listen to the show as well. Can you walk us through a bit of what your path to publication looked like? Because it looks different for everybody. I mean, I've never talked to an author and been like, oh, your story was the exact same as somebody else's. And I love getting to hear what everyone's unique story is like. Can you walk us through what that looked like for you?
Oh, of course. I think you do the same thing as everybody, where you're like, you know what? I think I can write a book, and then it's going to be a bestseller. It's just, I've never written before. I'm going to just be able to do it, And so my story, I think, actually starts in like 2009. I was teaching in Arkansas. I was a teacher. I taught fifth grade, and I was a member of Teach for America. And I had taken creative writing classes. I've read all these books. And so you thought about it, and you've done a couple of things. But I think one of the things that inspired me was I read an article, and it was about a hospital that's based out of England, and they were like, we own the rights to Peter Pan, the play, and they were like, we generated all these millions of dollars. And I'm like, wait, the person who wrote Peter Pan passed away how many years ago, and the thing that they created is still generating like all this revenue for them, into the future. And so that's when I started thinking about like, what are you leaving behind? How could that eventually help your family? And like, how are you creating? And I really do look at books almost like products. They're like, it's an experience you're giving to a person. It's just like, oh, that'd be such an interesting thing. Like, can I write that down? And so with me teaching fifth grade, I started with middle grade books first. So I wrote three middle grade manuscripts. So this is not my first book that I've written the end on, but I think that's important for aspiring writers. Like, you see a debut, you see all this, and you're like, oh my gosh, how did they do that with their first book? And it's like, I first started to seriously write in 2018. That's the time I tried to start writing that first middle grade book. And you see, it's like 2026. The book came out at the end of 2025. I've got like 12 different books in various forms on my like desktop. There's middle grade, there's women's fiction, there's all these things that you try in your journey to become a writer. So I think that's part of it. Another big part of my story, and what I cannot emphasize enough, is when I was writing middle grade, at least for me, there's an organization called We Need Diverse Books. And every year they have a competition, or at least they've had up to now. Well, they will pair you with a working author to help you with a manuscript. And so I had one book, it was Kira Manning and the Maze of Monsters. It was kind of, little little adventure story is a whole other aside. But I actually won that mentorship, and I worked with Rajani Laraka for 2021. That whole year we worked together. She gave me feedback on it. I was able to query it, and I had a couple of full submissions, but ultimately it didn't go anywhere with that particular thing. And then when the opportunity came to like write Nella, that's kind of what became my focus. Because also at that same time, the middle grade market had started to die a little bit. So if you're writing middle grade, the kids can't buy the books. You're competing with Roblox. The kids all have cell phones. And so as I'm getting older, that's what kind of drew my attention to women's fiction. So I started moving in that direction as well. So I would say the overall thing for anybody aspiring to be like a writer is don't be stuck on the how. Like, is there a company you can partner with? Is there an internship you can do? Can you write a book with somebody else? Like, what is this talk? Go to these things and exploring them. So I would say one of the keys to my success has always been like being open to the different opportunities. And then when it came to Nella herself, I started writing in 2023. And then I finished in October, and then we went on sub. And then the book sold in January of 2024. And then my editor moved to a different house. So she left her imprint and went somewhere else. So that kind of puts your book in purgatory. So the book was supposed to come out in April of 2025, but due to all the different changes and stuff, that's the business side of writing books, is like they pick a date. This is the day you're going out, and these things are happening. So I would say, I think that's just helpful for people to know that, from 2023 didn't come out until 2025. And then it's just like a long devotion you're giving to a project. So even if you have to have something to sustain you through that long time of kind of going through a story, if that's helpful.
It's so helpful and so interesting to hear. I think I was talking to an author recently, and even he was saying, he was like, I started writing this back in 2018, and now it's coming out in 2026. And he said he seemed kind of down about it. And I just told him, I go, look, there's no set timeline for any writer out there. And I think every writer that you meet many will often tell you that the first book that got published was not the first book they wrote. And that it takes a long time, but it's a huge testament to the dedication to the craft and wanting your story to be out there in the best place possible. And then there's the business side that you don't have a lot of control over too. And so recognizing that too, and kind of being accepting of that, and like you said, taking different opportunities and being curious about those. I think those are all things, whether you want to write a book or do something else, are great qualities to carry with you. You mentioned that you are working on something new.
Yeah.
Are you able to give us any hints about what it might be?
This is one of the things that's nice about like having published a book. For this next project, you don't have to write the whole thing. So that's one of the things. It's like, you can write like parts of it and then see if people are interested. And that's almost how you should approach any of the books, of like, don't try to, I know I said you needed to get to the end and just finish the thing, but sometimes it's right enough for people to let you know if it's got any legs there. If you should keep going, you can always come back to it. So this one deals with elements of time. It deals with elements of fate. And, I'm still struggling in this draft, trying to add on and build deeper. One of the notes I got was like, okay, we love the character, but, like, why? Why is she feeling this way? Like, why is she so tired? What she's going through. And so sometimes you really have to dig deep to be like, okay, well, why? It's not the surface level. Like, you have an initial reason you start doing the character, but then when you write more to like what you're going through. So like right now, I am tired of capitalism. I am tired of oppression. I'm tired of expectations. I'm tired of feeling like I did a good job and the only reward I get is more work. And so as I'm adding that in, that really helps connect me to that character, because I can understand, like, you're trying to help people. You believe you're doing a good thing, but you're wearing yourself out in the process. And so when in your life are you going to choose yourself? Like, consequences be damned. Like, when is it going to be that point? So I feel like if you're a writer and you're trying to like, what's that deeper like universal root connection that people, can identify with. Because again, money is not going to sustain you if you can't even have deep relationships and you just feel like you're just a hamster on a wheel. At what point are you just like, I'm ripping this thing off, I'm escaping, and this is what we're going to do? So hopefully that'll connect when I have my writing time later today, and I'll build on that a little bit more. But then, that book is supposed to be traditionally published. So I also have ideas for self-publishing. So I would like to do a cozy mystery series, something lighter, something not so angsty, something that doesn't take so long, and just some kind of like fun little adventures. And, again, I said I have those 12 books on my desktop. So those are kind of those future conversations, when you're talking with agents and you're talking with editors, again, which one would be the best to, suit and put out on the market that hopefully people can respond to and, identify with.
Hopefully you'll keep us posted on anything,
Yeah.
whatever the timeline is too, because I can't wait to see and read what's next. That'll be good. Well, after a long day of talking to me, hopefully some writing, what do you think your nightcap, if you will be at the end of the day?
Oh, that's where I have my pomegranate cosmopolitan. That is where it comes in. I get silly when I drink. It's like I'm so silly. I'm like so happy. It's like my sister hates. I get so annoying because I'm like, whoa, this is great. Life is fantastic. There are no problem. I'm just such the happy. I'm the happiest drunk. You have to drag me off the dance floor, and so that's why it's like you can't have that. So it would be like in the evening when you're done with everything, then you can have like that or a nice glass of wine. So hopefully, once January is over, we can get back to that. So if I
Right.
can
So
meet that goal.
maybe not today, but that perfectly ended it right where we started. For readers and everyone listening, where can they connect with you?
Okay, so you can connect with me on Instagram. I'm at Brionni Writes, and so that's where you'll see like repost of all the book covers. And I don't think I'm funny, but I'm on TikTok a lot. So that's where you'll see some of my repost of the funnier stuff that I come across on TikTok. I'm on there too. I don't really I haven't figured it out, but I'm on there too if you wanted to connect that way. And then my website, BrioniNwosu.com, that has like behind the scenes stuff. So like Brie was saying, you can see the books I was reading, you can hear the songs I was listening to as I was drafting Nella, and just getting your updates there. So I feel like that's all the social media stuff. But yeah, always send me a message. Always happy to chat, and hopefully I'll be back here and talking to Brie in another capacity. So that might be another way we can connect in the future.
Please do, please do. And I connect on social media. I'll link it in the podcast notes. Also, cannot recommend Bree's website enough with everything that's on there. If you're having a book club, there are amazing questions for your book club. Like we said, all of the books that contributed to the research and really brought Nella's story to life today, like cannot recommend it enough. So go check it out, everybody.
And if you're looking for a website, then what is it? Maite Danilla. I put her thing. She designed my website not for free. I gave her something, but she was the website designer who was helping authors design their websites. And so she was just looking for practice clients, and I happened to work with her. And so now that's what she does. So if you look at the bottom of my website, or you go to Copper Fox, I believe is one of her things, she only designs websites for authors to help them figure out their brand, to figure out their marketing and doing all this other stuff. So I cannot take any credit for how pretty that website is. So click on that link if you're looking for a website designer, just to see, if you really want to see your, book, your writing, and all your stuff come to life.
Such a perfect plug. Yes, absolutely. Bree, thank you so, so, so much for chatting with me today. Like I said earlier, The Wondrous Life and Loves of Nella Carter was the book. I didn't know how much I needed it. And so I'm so grateful. I really needed a story to ask what it means to live long enough to see the world change over and over and still believe in it, to witness loss and beauty side by side because they both exist, and to still choose humanity anyway. There's something that I would say is very magical in that kind of hope. So thank you so much.
You're going to have to send me that clip. Oh,
I can do that. I absolutely can. Cheers.
cheers.
Thanks so much for listening. The Narratives and Nightcaps podcast is a production of The Craft Co. with intro music created by Remington Haynes.
Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow at Narratives and Nightcaps on Instagram or visit our website, narrativesandnightcaps.com.
Sign up for our newsletter to always know what we're reading next, which authors are joining us on the show, and for extra bookish and beverage info.
Connect with our additional co-hosts, Jordan and Emily, as well.
You can find me on Instagram at Cozy Reads and Sips.
And you can find me on Instagram at books.bottles.
Cheers!
Cheers!